Next, we have Eldritch Knight, a post-apocalyptic Gamelit adventure, the Dark Hierophant Saga, book number 1, written by J. Marcus Ham. It is 563 pages. It is $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. The world ended as many thought it might, with fire and spectacle. Eldritch horrors descend from the sky to consume the world. Only a last-minute intervention by a mysterious hegemony of the worlds saves Earth, albeit temporarily. Skills, levels, and battles with twisted monsters are part of the new reality the survivors will have to face. Augustus Finn wakes up after surviving countless terrors. He is thrown directly into danger as the twist of fate places him in the area designed to contain and dispose of Eldritch lifeforms. Area is also known as dungeons. He will have to compete with monsters, alien peacekeepers, and his own inner demons if he is to survive. So there we go. Okay. This was something that was on my backlist. It came a little while ago. It has actually has a pretty good beginning with the main character caught up in this Eldritch RPG apocalypse. And by Eldritch, I mean like old gods, kind of like almost Cthulhu-ish kind of stuff, but with different gods instead of Cthulhu. The main character in the beginning of the story has a very neat power, reactive learning, that lets him learn or adapt from monsters he's attacked by, but it's pretty well balanced with like a really long cooldown time. So it's not like an overpowered characteristic trait or power. And from there, there's an introduction of some aliens who are trying to contain the madness and eldritch monsters unleashed on Earth and possibly offer aid. The story itself never really felt like a post-apocalyptic story. It felt more like elder horror. And the post-apocalyptic tag was just kind of added to kind of fill in to some kind of category. But that's a separate side issue. There's a good-ish explanation of the RPG system, and in the beginning of the story, there's actually really good RPG progression based on the point system and buying stuff. However, most of that kind of fades away after about the 33% mark. After that point, the story really loses the emphasis on the RPG progression aspects and instead focuses on the Eldritch horror stuff as the main character starts making pacts with his demon entity in his mind. And at some point in the story, the RPG stuff kind of disappears. It's a plot point, but it actually disappears entirely. And the Eldritch old one stuff, it's not bad. It really isn't. But you can tell from the amount of time that the author spends on it that that's kind of the real focus of the story. And that's perfectly fine if that's what you're interested in. For me, I love the RPG stuff. In Lit RPG, that's what I come for. And again, it's just after that 33% mark, sometimes the RPG stuff just felt like this kind of thing that had to be there. Or like you could possibly replace it with a magic system or just like a power system, and it would be basically the same story. And again, not to say that it's not Lit RPG. The author makes the effort to include power-ups and leveling up a couple times, or like at least a sentence in mid and late story saying, "Oh, I leveled up 4 different times. I have some points to spend," and it'll spend like a paragraph or two, and then it goes back to the Eldritch horror stuff, but it kind of pretends the other stuff didn't matter, or it doesn't. It's not as focused, I should say, on the RPG stuff. And that's perfectly fine. Essentially, a lot of the RPG stuff is just set up in the beginning, and then mid and late story, it's pushed into the background as like the story of the Eldritch horror stuff kind of takes precedent. And for some readers, they're really going to enjoy that. Like some readers love that aspect of Lit RPG where the story takes precedence with RPG mechanics. I'm not that kind of reader. I love the RPG stuff. And I love seeing the progression and every system be like a character in the story where it really matters all the time and not just as a replacement for a magic system. You know what I mean? And again, that's personal preference. But that particular shift in the storyline did kind of lessen my enjoyment of the story. Overall, again, this has a nice start to it, but it kind of, again, lost me about mid to end late story because the RPG stuff that I thought was really well done just started getting minimized and even disappears. If you don't mind light RPG mechanics and you like Eldritch horror and you feel that that's something that you're really into, I think you'll actually enjoy this story a lot more than I did. I'm not that into Eldritch horror, so that wasn't a big selling point for me. So for me, I didn't quite it good. Like the beginning was good, but as like hit mid to late story, just dropped down. So for me, it gets a 6 out of 10. Didn't quite work for me. Again, not a bad review score. It's not boring. It's not a 5. It's not I don't have any bad feelings about it. It's not a 4. It's just like, oh, didn't quite work. It wasn't quite good by the end of the novel. So it gets a 6 out of 10. That's Eldritch Knight, a post-apocalyptic game-lit adventure of the dark Hierophant Saga, book number 1, with a score of, again, 6 out of 10.